Hey everybody, I am here back again with Jessica Gold. If you watched the previous video that I did here on YouTube with her, we talked about her experiences learning in different tantric spiritual communities and the profound effect that that had on her. So if you haven't watched that video, go check it out. It'll be linked in the description. And what we want to talk about today is how that experience, that varied background, those shifts, those big aha moments where she got cracked wide open, how those have been used now to take what she learned and help other people. So we're going to talk a little bit about her methodology and how she actually works with clients and yeah, how she can use those experiences to transform other people's lives. So Jessica, welcome back again to the channel.
My pleasure, Kevin.
And so let's talk a little bit about, again, how you are helping people with your background. So we don't need to go into the whole background again. We've done a podcast together. I'll link that in the description also so people can listen to that. We've also done a previous YouTube video where we talked about some of your experiences. So let's talk about your work. How have you taken what you've learned from your past, from those years you spent exploring and learning, and put that into a program to actually transform people's lives?
Yeah, great question. So, when I realized that as a scientist, I had never had a single class in how to be a healthy human, I was furious. And I'm a very passionate person. And when I learned these esoteric secrets of sexuality that had really been hidden from me, because of religion, I couldn't believe it. How much power and pleasure I had not known about, not been connected to, and I was determined to bring this information to other people like me. And at the time, I saw a lot of people working with women, and I wanted to do something different. I've always been rebellious. I consider myself a relationship rebel as well. I wanted to just do things differently. Also, as a scientist, I'd been cut off most of my life from the neck down and was really just trying to logic my way through life, trying to convince my partner that if he only saw things the way I did, he wouldn't feel what he was feeling, and just directing things through maximum efficiency and just trying to get everything done and control and like all these things that led to my divorce. So when I awakened into like daring to embrace sensuality and the body and the wisdom and all of these tools of like using the body to work for me, to be more present, more loving, more powerful, I was like, okay, how can I bring this actually to the other scientists, engineers, and men in tech of the world, people in leadership positions who may also feel cut off from the neck down and be afraid of reconnecting with this other side of life? How can I make it more accessible? And so I developed a system that I call Bliss Science, which I like because it encompasses both the scientific background, the scientific aspects, because I don't throw out science when I teach. I use all of modern research in psychology and neuroscience, along with like the blissful aspects, which are more what can be associated with Tantra sometimes. And really overall Bliss Science is in a way what the tantrics were about, but not bliss as a peak experience, bliss as more the peace that passes all understanding, like this abiding, deep, low note resonance of like, that can be cultivated in your life. So the way that I did this was I put it together in the Bliss Science method, which has 3 pillars. And these were all things that I had to go through myself. So I only teach the things that I had to humbly learn and that I offer as a way to bridge the divide between men and women. I'm really passionate about helping men understand women better so we can all have more love and great sex.
Yeah, I'm all for that too. It's interesting that you say that because I always saw myself working with men, and I do work with a lot of men. But recently, in the last few months, all of a sudden, this whole opportunity has opened up to work with a lot of women. And primarily, what I'm doing with the women is helping the women understand men and how we think and how we work.
Yay! I love that. Yes, I was so tired of the gender wars and men are from Mars, women are from Venus. I'm like, hello, let's change this. We need to help each other. And what I see out there is most couples too seem to have a slog of a relationship where they're underwater, overwhelmed with tasks, barely making it through, exhausted, need help, and all pleasure or connection goes out the window. And modern culture does not help you at all with this. Like, we are so unsupported today. And I created a radically different kind of relationship with my partner that is not like that. And so I also work with couples to help them feel more free and more connected in their relationship. And the Bliss Science method, though, like I said, has 3 pillars. The first is authentic personal power. So that's really about first realizing, like, taking ownership, taking radical responsibility for the life that you have created. And this is not to say that you alone are individualistically responsible for everything. No, we're embedded in systems and you should ask for help. But to really get out of victim mentality, which is what I had to do, instead of being lost and waiting for your partner to change or the culture to change or something to change, you change. It's very deeply empowering. So authentic personal power, but it's also about creating true confidence. And as a total nerd who's had to do a lot of public speaking as a PhD student and in my current business, I had to find a way to develop confidence. And true confidence for me is about feeling confident in those moments when I feel insecure. What I mean by that is being okay with feeling insecure. I'm like, okay, this is what's showing up for me right now. I'm going to roll with it. I don't need to be any other way than what I am. So I teach these through somatic embodied practices where we work with your body, your breath, your energy, like how you stand, how you move. I'm not convincing your brain that you should just do things differently. And I'm not coming at this from the point of view that you're wrong or broken and you need to be better. A lot of men write into me and say, well, I want to be better. And I'm like, okay, we don't want to come from that motivation. We want to come from the motivation of how are you already amazing? And where do we want to refine this? So those are some of the things that go on in pillar 1, like developing authentic personal power. In pillar 2, it's developing excellence in relating. So I call this relational intelligence. It's different from emotional intelligence, although emotional intelligence is a subset of it. It's about getting really nerdy about how is the health of the relationship and the health of the connection between you and me. Most people approach relationships as like a 50-50 zero-sum game, where if I get extra rest time, that means I win and you lose. Or if you get extra time out with your buddies, I'm losing because I'm doing more chores. Or if I'm happy, it's because you compromised and you're unhappy. But what I'm interested in is not what's good for me versus what's good for you, and instead what's good for the connection between the two of us, which is a radical shift in the way that we approach relationships. So changing the whole paradigm of relating. There's a lot of other things under relational intelligence, like boundaries, which many men I work with come because they're nice guys and bending over backwards to please their woman and believing that boundaries are mean. I used to also think that way. So we work with setting boundaries and standards, and also evaluating her. Like, if you're single and dating, many men fall into the trap of, oh my God, am I good enough for her? Will she like me? Is this okay? And we want to flip that script and say, actually, is she good enough for you? You don't want to come at this from like an egotistical place, but just to say, like, is she going to love me? Is she going to treat me well? Does she show kindness and relational intelligence? So, yeah. And then the third pillar is wise and sacred sexuality, but I'll pause there for a moment.
Yeah, relational intelligence, by the way, if you haven't heard of that, is really, it's a newer term, but it's a really important thing, I think, for people to understand. I actually had, what was his name? Bandelli. I think it's Adam Bandelli. He wrote the book called Relational Intelligence.
Oh, great.
I had him on the show. I will go find that link and link it in the description on this one too. So if you want to know more about what relational intelligence actually is, I would highly recommend checking that out. So yeah, that's a very important part of any sort of relationship. And like, what you were talking about yourself about not seeing things as a zero-sum game. That's the way when I'm teaching that stuff, I'm basically teaching it from the point of view of you got to be a team. Like you got to view your relationship as a team, and the team is always
Yeah.
working together for the good and the success of the team itself, right? So it's not a me versus you kind of thing, which you correctly stated is unfortunately the way most people operate in relationship, right? And it boggles my mind because I'm like, this is you're a couple. You're living together. You're potentially creating children together. Like some of you are running businesses together. How are you competing against each other? No, no, you don't compete against each other. Think about it. I mean, if you want to just take an example of a company, right? Everybody in the company is supposed to be working together for the goals, to achieve the goals of the company. You're not all out competing each other within the company. You're competing against people outside other companies, right? Like it boggles my mind that people don't get this about relationship, that you're supposed to be a team. You're supposed to
Yeah.
work together, and you're supposed to help each other for each other's benefit and the benefit of the relationship as a whole. It is a huge reframe that people like you and me are constantly working on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm interested in relationships as a vehicle for personal growth, which is a radical new idea. And I think we have to reframe it a lot because up until recently, relationships were just for an economic or political arrangement. And it really was the dominator paradigm where the man just told the woman what to do. So the idea that we are here to be partners and help each other grow is a totally new one. And no one gave us the playbook on how to do that or the instruction manual. So I like to say to my men here, I'm going to give you the instruction manual for modern relating and for what women want. So if you're in a sexless marriage and you want to rekindle that and you don't know how, it's really, you probably just have a few blind spots and you can fix that. It's not rocket science. Here's the book, you know.
I'm in a group on social media. This group was originally started by somebody who's no longer running it anymore. But he had way early on when I was first starting to go out on other shows. He had my wife and I on his show a couple of times, and so that's how we ended up in this group. Because we were connected because he was interviewing us. We had him on our show at one point too, way back in the beginning. And he's since turned over that business to somebody else, but I'm still in the group. And here's why I bring this up. Because every single day I see men in this group. Like this group has basically evolved into, and I don't know if evolved is really the right word, but it's evolved into a group of a bunch of men who have completely screwed up their relationships and now realize it, but only because their wives have all said, I'm done and I want a divorce. So every single day, there's post after post after post in this group about my wife says she's done and she wants out and I don't want a divorce and what do I do? Right? Over and over and over again because they didn't take the time to learn and nurture the relationship and treat it the way that it needs to be treated.
Yeah.
I unfortunately, and I only do this every once in a while because they don't listen to me anyway in this group, but but every once in a while I'll just pop in and remind them that, and you can tell me if this is true in your experience, but it has absolutely been true in my experience of doing years of coaching and speaking with a lot of women. Once a woman decides that she's out and she's done, she's done. And there's no convincing her otherwise. Women will stick with something for a long period of time. They will either just suffer with it and hope he changes, or they will take active, measures to try to shift the relationship, and they'll take a lot of abuse. But once they've actually made that decision and said, that's it, I cannot take anymore, I'm out, that's it, they're out. There's no convincing them otherwise. And I hate to have to be the guy to tell this to a lot of these guys, but it's like it's not the ninth inning with two outs. The game is over. Like it's over, and they're trying to figure out how to go back to yesterday's game and win it, right? And it's like, sorry, it's
Yeah.
too late.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think you probably have more data on that than I do. I know that, in my work with Terry Real, who I train with for couples, working with couples, there's this idea of leverage. And I think a lot of times because it's so shameful, especially for men, especially for smart men, to consider studying themselves or relational things. Like those are sort of like uncouth, like those are feminine, those are weak, or a distraction from the real goal of life, which is making money and providing. Right? So those things are so shameful. And they were very shameful for me because I was raised in an extremely patriarchal environment where psychology was like, oh, too out there. And so you can't get through to a man, to often to men with like hints and little signs or even gentle questioning. And the only leverage that gets through is, hey, if you don't wake up, I'm out the door.
Yeah, but see,
So,
that's an ultimatum, though. That's different. So if you say, if you don't wake up, I'm out the door, you haven't yet said, I'm out the door. There's a difference. So I have to make this distinction
okay.
with men all the time, because sometimes women, they get in this like sort of indecision phase where it's like they don't know if they should stay or if they should go. That's not the
Yeah.
decision. What I'm saying is once she has decided, she's like, that's it, I'm done, papers are getting filed, you're not changing her mind. It's
Yeah.
just not going to happen.
I mean, convincing and changing the mind is the wrong approach anyway.
Of course,
Like,
of course. But
yeah.
that's what they're all trying to do. But
Yeah.
here's an interesting thing too, though, since we're on this topic. There are some of them in there that get that it's not about trying to convince her or change their mind. Some of them actually are embarking on a serious, um, serious journey of making themselves better, right? Trying to fix all the ways that they went wrong. However, it's still too late at that point. So what I tell them all the time is keep doing what you're doing, right? Keep
Yeah.
becoming the best version of yourself because you're going to need it in your next relationship. But if you
Yeah.
think it's going to save this one that you're in now, it's too little too late. She's not going to trust you. It would take years. You would have to be transformed, like actually transformed. And then it would take probably years of you showing up repeatedly in that transformed state before she will ever trust you again. And she's
Yeah.
not going to stick around that long.
Yeah. I mean, I think the clinging and the holding on, it comes back to they need to develop their own authentic personal power. And I had to do this as well. Again, I'm not speaking to this from like I'm better than anyone point of view, but it's like a sense of self-love and self-compassion that's not dependent on who's your partner. So often men have been taught that their status in society is about how much money they make, their muscles, and the woman on their arm. And so they may feel like they're nothing or no one if she leaves. And but that is like a huge opportunity to develop this true inner sense of like, no, I am okay with myself. I love myself. I know who I am. I can stand in my confidence even through this. It's a huge gift in that way. And I will say, my marriage ended in divorce, and I couldn't change my partner's mind. I also had not listened. We had been in therapy, but I refused to back down from my defensiveness. I refused to do certain things to change because I just I didn't realize really that what to do. And the conditioning was too intense from my childhood. But once we divorced, it profoundly changed my life. And I spent the next decade studying personal growth and got really nerdy about it. And life is so much more interesting. It's so fun. I love it. And it's allowed me to have the relationship of my dreams now.
That's an interesting
Yeah.
point that you just made also, and it was something I thought of earlier, but I didn't have an opportunity to bring it into the conversation, and then I kind of forgot about it as we went in another direction. But you were talking about where a lot of other people are as far as like in their head and like everything has to be science and proven and this and that, and
Yeah.
when you open up to these other ideas, kind of like what we were talking about in our previous video, being open to explore things that are maybe outside the norm, that's when the good stuff in life comes in, right?
Yes.
So, so, so you're missing out on some of the best parts of being human if you're not open to that stuff.
And I see a lot of shaming of men in the media. And of course, there's shaming of women all the time, too, right? Don't get me wrong. But I don't think shame is an effective tool for social change. All of my teachers have told me that. And yeah. And so I try to come at this from the point of view of like, look, I know this might be really hard internally for you. Maybe everything you've been taught is like recoiling from the idea of studying yourself or studying relating. And let me tell you, I just want to reach out a hand. It could be fun if you turn the lens of like nerdy scientist on it. I think doing experiments like science gives people permission to try new things, to be a beginner, to not know. And so if you say, okay, well, I'm just gonna like experiment with myself and try showing up in different ways, then I think it can like allow the shame to quiet down a little bit. But I also do a lot of practices with the feeling of shame, like honoring it and helping diffuse it in a skillful way so that you don't have to pretend that it's not there anymore. It actually does step aside and allow you to change.
Yeah. So I think we only covered the first two pillars. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk about the third pillar a little bit because there's a couple more things, but I'm like, we're just going to go down rabbit holes. So
Yeah.
let's course correct and come back and let's talk about that last pillar a little bit.
Yeah. So wise and sacred sexuality. Listen, guys, when I first unshamed my desire and realized how strong it was, I watched myself. I was like, sometimes I would see a man I was attracted to, and the next thing I knew, I would be like in front of him, talking to him, trying to hope he might like me, and we could connect. So, like, I get it that like sexuality is a really strong energy in our bodies, and a lot of men come because, we want more sex, we want more intimacy from our partner, and we haven't been taught how to handle our own desire with love and with care in a way that's not all putting it out on her. We have, I don't know, hundreds of thousands, millions of years of history where that was just what you do. If you're a man, you have desire, you put it on her. It's her responsibility to take care of that for you. So wise and sacred sexuality brings that back in. And Tantra is really about studying all the parts of your life with awareness, bringing awareness to everything. And that includes your desire, your energy, even your sexual center, these parts of your body that many men feel disconnected from. So that's the first step. But the thing about wise and sacred sexuality is that if you have a sex problem in your marriage, it's usually not a sex problem. It's usually an emotional problem, a communication problem, something else. So it's like the little canary in the coal mine that's showing you, hey, there's an opportunity you're missing to connect deeper with your woman. So it could be something you could say thank you to, like, wow, I never would have been aware that she didn't like the way I communicated with her if this hadn't shown up in our sex life. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good point that you made about is it's likely not about sex itself. This is why this is a big question often asked in Tantra. Maybe you've heard it before, maybe they phrase it differently, but one of the questions that is often asked is what's in the way? What's in the way? When you're looking at a problem, you're saying she doesn't want or he doesn't this or whatever, it's like what's in the way?
Yeah, we often only think of accelerators, to paraphrase Emily Nagoski in Come As You Are, but like lingerie, flowers, expensive dinners out. But if the brakes are on hardcore, doesn't matter in your car how much you push the accelerator, you're not going to move forward. And the brakes could be long-standing resentments, exhaustion, unequal division of childcare,
Trauma,
right? Yeah.
all, negative past experiences, you know,
So
stuff you picked up from your parents.
yeah, all of that. And so when you as a man develop wise sexuality, you become a master at identifying the brakes and taking off the brake. And that is such a gift, not only to you, but to her. Because like being well fucked is such a gift to a woman, and being connected sexually is one of the most profound and loving things you can do together. And so, really, you as the man leading the way and saying, how can I tend to this garden of our sex life in a wise way? Like, what needs to be pruned, what needs to be moved, what needs to let die, and what needs to grow, like what needs to be watered. Yes.
Quoting Miss Kiminami there, being the well-fucked woman.
Yes, she was right about that.
She bases a lot of her work around the benefits of being well-fucked. So,
And the sacredness of sexuality is like it's this thing that you do not take for granted. It's this thing that you bring your awareness to, that you devote time and energy to, and also your own erotic life independent of your partner, so that you light up inside and you magnetize her. A lot of men have never considered that, right? It's more about pushing, convincing, like getting her instead of resting back and inviting, because you're irresistible to her, which is what I love to teach. Because you guys, a man who listens well, validates you, and takes care of himself is like, oh, and has good boundaries, irresistible.
so guys, if you're watching this video, obviously hear the words that she said, but even more important than the words that she just said, did you see the way her face lit up? Everything about her changed when she started to talk about that, because that's how actually exciting it is to her as a feminine woman, and to most other feminine women as well. So important to understand.
Thank you for pointing that out.
It was so obvious to me. I was just like, you were glowing and you were so excited to talk about it. I'm like, that right there, that's what you want to bring out of your woman.
Yes, and when I realized what seeing amazing men in this world, what it does for me, how it lights me up, how exciting and fun it is to play. And I don't mean I'm open to having sex with multiple men. Please don't take it that way. But I do love to admire beautiful examples of the masculine. And when I realized what that does for women and what it will do for your woman, that's why I'm so passionate about supporting men to step into this version of themselves, to be this irresistible man, because it's a gift that you bring to us when you bring it with your integrity and integration.
Absolutely. Well, this is the perfect moment to tell people where they can find a little bit more about your work in case they're interested in working with you in that way.
Yeah, fantastic. So my website is bliss-science.com. So bliss-science.com. And there you can find all the links to download my freebies, which How to Be Irresistible to Your Woman in 4 Steps is one of them, to watch my TEDx talk, Chemistry for Your Sex-Starved Marriage, to join my free Facebook group, And I also write on Medium if you want to get more of my ridiculous things that I say and more into my life. You can read some of my articles there.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on yet again and sharing your experience and your knowledge. And I hope people listening to it learned something, which is always the goal. And I hope it inspired you to maybe get off your butt and do something about changing your life and making your life, your sex, your love, your relationship better.
Take it from a scientist. It's not rocket science. You can do this. I did it.
Yes, anybody can do it. You just need the right guidance sometimes.
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.